My name is Rachel Dawson. I am 29 years old. 6 months ago, my husband was killed in a firefight overseas. That is what the Marine Corps told me. That is what I forced myself to believe. I wore black. I stood at his funeral. I watched them fold the flag and hand it to me. And for 6 months, I tried to learn how to breathe without him. Then one night, my older brother called me. His voice sounded wrong. "Rachel," he said, "I need you to come over right now. There is something on my computer you have to see." And when I finally looked at that screen, every single thing I believed for the past 6 months shattered in an instant. Let me take you back to the beginning. My husband's name was Marcus. He was 32 years old, a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, stationed out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. We had been married for 4 years. Before that, we dated for 3. 7 years total. 7 years of him being the steadiest, most dependable person I had ever known. Marcus was not the loudest guy in the room. He never tried to be. He was the kind of man who showed up. Every single time, without excuses, without drama, he just showed up. When my mom got sick, Marcus drove 4 hours after a 12-hour shift just to sit with her at the hospital. When our neighbor's roof started leaking during a hurricane, Marcus was up there the next morning with a tarp and a tool bag before anyone even asked. That was who he was. He had been deployed 3 times before. Each time, the goodbye was hard. Each time, I would stand in the doorway of our little house in Jacksonville, watching him load his bag into the truck, trying not to cry until he pulled out of the driveway. And each time, he came back. A little more tired, maybe. A little quieter for the first few days. But he always came back. The 4th deployment was supposed to be his last. He told me that before he left. 6 more months, Rach. That is it. Then I am done. I am coming home for good. I held on to those words like they were a promise from God himself. For the first 3 months, things were normal. We talked when we could. The calls were short, sometimes only 5 or 10 minutes, and the connection was always terrible. But just hearing his voice was enough. He would ask me about the dog. I would tell him that Biscuit had chewed up another pair of his boots. He would laugh and say, "Well, at least somebody misses me." I would say, "Everybody misses you, Marcus. Everybody." Then the calls stopped. At first, I did not panic. That happened sometimes during deployments. Communication would go dark for a few days, sometimes even a couple of weeks, depending on where they were and what was going on. I told myself it was normal. I kept busy. I went to work at the veterinary clinic where I had been a technician for 3 years. I cleaned the house. I cooked meals for one. I walked Biscuit around the neighborhood every evening and tried not to think too hard about the silence. But after 2 weeks with no word, the worry started creeping in. I called the family readiness officer. She told me she had no updates, but that no news was good news. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then, on a Tuesday morning in October, I heard a knock on my front door. It was 9 a.m. I had just gotten out of the shower. My hair was still wet. I remember that detail because everything about that morning is burned into my memory permanently. I opened the door and saw 2 Marines in dress blues standing on my porch. One of them was a chaplain. The moment I saw the chaplain, my knees almost gave out. Because you do not get a visit from a chaplain with good news. That is not how it works. Every military spouse knows that. The casualty assistance officer spoke first. He was calm, professional, gentle in the way that people are gentle when they are about to destroy your world. He told me that Marcus's unit had come under heavy fire during a nighttime operation in a remote area. An IED detonated near their vehicle. The blast was severe. Recovery teams were sent to the site within hours, but the conditions were dangerous. They recovered remains and personal effects. Based on the evidence collected, the Marine Corps had determined that Staff Sergeant Marcus Dawson was killed in action. I do not remember exactly what I said. I think I said no. I think I said it more than once. I remember gripping the door frame so hard that my fingernails bent backward. I remember the chaplain stepping forward and saying something about God and peace and courage, and I remember wanting to scream at him to stop talking. But I did not scream. I just stood there, soaking wet, in a bathrobe, while two strangers told me that the person I loved most in this world was gone. The days after that are blurry. People came, people left. My mom flew in from Ohio. My brother drove down from Virginia. Friends from the base brought casseroles and hugged me and told me how brave Marcus was, how proud I should be, and I nodded. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I said thank you when I was supposed to say thank you. But inside, I felt absolutely nothing. Like someone had scooped out everything that made me a person and left behind just a body that could walk and talk and pretend. The funeral was held at the National Cemetery in Wilmington. Full military honors. The rifle salute. The bugler playing taps. The flag folding ceremony. I sat in the front row, clutching that folded flag against my chest, and I thought, this cannot be real. This is not actually happening to me. But it was. It was happening, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. After the funeral, everyone went home. My mom stayed for 2 weeks, then she had to go back. My brother stayed for a few days after that, then he left too. And suddenly I was alone in the house again. Just me and Biscuit and the silence. Marcus's things were everywhere. His running shoes by the back door. His razor on the bathroom sink. A half-read paperback on his nightstand, the corner of page 143 folded down. I could not bring myself to move any of it. Touching his things felt like admitting he was really gone, and some part of me was not ready to admit that. Maybe no part of me would ever be ready. The nights were the worst. I would lie in bed and reach across to his side, and the sheets would be cold. Sometimes I pulled his pillow close and just held it, trying to remember what it felt like when he was there. Some nights I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Marcus and me at the beach in Emerald Isle. Marcus grilling burgers on the 4th of July with that ridiculous apron I bought him as a joke that said, "Kiss the cook," and he actually wore it every single time. Marcus asleep on the couch with Biscuit curled up on his chest. I saved every voicemail he ever left me. There were only 6. Most of them were short and silly. "Hey babe, I forgot to tell you there is leftover pizza in the fridge. Do not let Biscuit get it." But the last one, the one he left about a week before the calls stopped, I listened to that one almost every night. His voice sounded tired but warm. "Hey Rach, long day. Just wanted to hear your voice, but I guess you are at work. I love you. I will talk to you soon. I will talk to you soon." I played those words over and over until they stopped sounding like a promise and started sounding like a ghost. 5 months passed. Then 6. The sharpest edges of the grief had dulled just slightly. Not because the pain was less, but because I had gotten better at carrying it. I went back to work full-time. I started seeing a therapist on base. I joined a support group for Gold Star spouses. I was not okay, but I was functioning. And some days, that felt like enough. Then one evening in late March, everything changed. I was sitting on the couch, watching something on TV that I was not really paying attention to. Biscuit was asleep at my feet. My phone rang. It was my brother, Kevin. He lived up in Arlington, Virginia, worked in IT for a defense contractor. We talked maybe once or twice a week, usually casual stuff. "How is mom? How is work?" The normal things siblings talk about. But when I answered the phone, Kevin did not sound normal. He sounded the way people sound when they are trying very hard to stay calm and failing. "Rachel," he said. "Are you home right now?" "Yeah," I said. "I am on the couch." "Why?" He paused. The pause lasted about 3 seconds, but it felt like 30. "I need you to come up here," he said. "Tonight, if you can." I sat up straight. "Kevin, what is going on? Is everything okay? Are you okay?" "I am fine," he said. "Everyone is fine, but there is something I found, and I cannot explain it over the phone. You need to see it in person." "You are scaring me," I said. "Just tell me what it is." Another pause. Then he said, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, "It is about Marcus." My heart stopped. For a full second, it felt like my heart just stopped beating. "What about Marcus?" I said. My voice cracked on his name. "Rachel," Kevin said slowly. I think he might be alive. The room tilted. I grabbed the arm of the couch. What? That is not funny. Kevin, that is not something you joke about. I am not joking, he said. I swear to God, I am not joking. I was going through some satellite imagery at work, cross-referencing coordinates for a project. And I found something, a report that was flagged and then buried. Rachel, there's a field hospital in eastern Turkey that has had an unidentified American patient for almost 5 months. The physical description matches Marcus. Height, weight, blood type, even the tattoo on his left forearm. The eagle. Rachel, it is him. I think it is him. I could not speak. I could not think. My entire body had gone numb. That is not possible, I whispered. They told me he was dead. They had evidence. They had his dog tags. I know what they told you, Kevin said. But I am telling you what I found. And I've been staring at this data for 3 hours, and I cannot find another explanation. Someone survived that blast, Rachel. And I think it was Marcus. The drive from Jacksonville to Arlington takes about 6 hours. I made it in 5. I do not remember most of the drive. I just remember gripping the steering wheel and shaking and praying and trying not to completely fall apart on I-95 at midnight. When I got to Kevin's apartment, he was already waiting at the door. He looked like he had not slept in days. His eyes were red. He had printed out pages and pages of documents and spread them across his dining room table. Sit down, he said. I sat. He pushed a stack of papers toward me. This is the report from the field hospital, he said. Unidentified male, approximately 30 to 35, found by Turkish border patrol about 2 miles from the site of a military incident. Severe blast injuries. Shrapnel wounds to the torso and left leg. Significant head trauma. He was unconscious when they found him. No identification on him, no dog tags. No wallet, nothing. I read the physical description. 6'1", 185 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. Typo-positive blood. Tattoo on left inner forearm, described as an eagle with spread wings. My hand started trembling. Marcus had that exact tattoo. He got it the week he graduated from boot camp. I was there the day he got it. I held his hand because he would never admit it, but he was terrified of needles. Kevin, I said. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. This could be anyone. There are thousands of Marines with eagle tattoos. Keep reading, he said. I turned the page. There was a medical note from 3 weeks after admission. The patient had regained partial consciousness, but was disoriented and unable to provide personal information. He suffered from severe traumatic brain injury, resulting in retrograde amnesia. He could not remember his name, his unit, his country, or how he got there. The hospital had contacted American military channels, but the report had been filed, cross-referenced against known MIA cases, and because Marcus was classified as Kia, not MIA, it never triggered a match. They never looked for him, I said quietly, because they already decided he was dead. Kevin nodded. That is what it looks like. I stared at the papers for a long time. My mind was spinning in 100 different directions. Hope and fear and anger and confusion all tangled together so tightly I could not separate any of them. What do we do? I asked. Kevin sat down across from me. I already contacted the hospital directly through a back channel. They confirmed the patient is still there. He is stable. He is recovering. But Rachel, they said he still does not remember who he is. Those words hit me in a way I was not prepared for. My husband might be alive, but he might not know he has a wife. He might not know he has a home. He might not know that someone has been grieving for him every single day for 6 months. I have to go there, I said. I know, Kevin said. I already looked at flights. We flew out 2 days later. Kevin took emergency leave from work. I called the veterinary clinic and told them I needed time off. I did not tell them why. I did not tell anyone, because part of me was terrified that we would get there and it would not be Marcus, that it would be some stranger with the same build and the same tattoo, and I would have to grieve all over again. But a bigger part of me, the part that had never fully accepted those words from the casualty officer, the part that had been whispering to me for 6 months that something was wrong, that part of me already knew. The flight to Istanbul took 11 hours. From there, we took a domestic flight to a smaller city near the eastern border, then drove another 2 hours on narrow mountain roads to reach the town where the hospital was located. The landscape was stark and beautiful. Dry hills, scattered villages, wide open sky. It felt like the edge of the world. The hospital was small, maybe 20 beds. It looked more like a large clinic than an actual hospital. A Turkish doctor met us at the entrance. He spoke decent English. Kevin had already coordinated the visit, so they were expecting us. The doctor was kind but careful. He explained that the patient, who the staff had been calling John because he could not provide a name, had made significant physical progress over the past several months. His wounds had healed well. He could walk, eat, and communicate. But his memory remained almost entirely blank. He remembered fragments sometimes, flashes of images, the sound of a helicopter, a dog barking, the smell of gunpowder, but nothing cohesive. Nothing that connected to a real life. "I need to see him," I said. The doctor nodded. He led us down a hallway, through a set of double doors, and into a small courtyard at the back of the building. There were a few plastic chairs and a single table under a canvas awning. And sitting at that table, reading a Turkish newspaper that he almost certainly could not understand, was a man. My legs stopped working. Kevin put his hand on my back to steady me. The man at the table was thinner than I remembered. His hair was longer. There was a scar running along the left side of his jaw that had not been there before. But his shoulders, the way he held himself, the way he tilted his head slightly to the right when he was concentrating on something. It was Marcus. I covered my mouth with both hands. The tears came instantly, violently, from somewhere so deep inside me that it physically hurt. "Marcus," I said. It came out as barely a whisper. He looked up. His eyes, those same brown eyes I had looked into 1,000 times, met mine. But there was no recognition in them. He looked at me the way you look at someone you have never met before. Polite, curious, blank. "Hello," he said. "Can I help you?" Those 4 words nearly destroyed me. I had imagined this moment so many times. In every version, he smiled. He said my name. He held me. But this was not any of those versions. This was something I had not prepared for. My husband was alive, sitting 10 feet away from me, and he had no idea who I was. Kevin stepped forward and gently explained the situation to the doctor, who then spoke quietly with Marcus in simple English. He told him that a woman had come a very long way because she believed he was her husband. Marcus looked at me again. I could see him searching his own mind, trying to find something, anything, that connected to my face. But there was nothing there. He looked back at the doctor with an expression that broke my heart. "I am sorry," he said. "I do not remember her." The doctor pulled me aside afterward. He told me that this kind of amnesia was unpredictable. Some patients recovered fully, some recovered partially, some never did. "The brain heals on its own timeline," he said. "You cannot force it. But familiar stimuli can sometimes help. Sounds, smells, places, people from the patient's life before the injury." Kevin and I checked into a small guest house near the hospital. I called my mom that night and told her everything. She cried for 20 minutes straight. Then she said, "You bring that boy home, Rachel. You hear me? You bring him home." The next morning, I went back to the hospital. I brought my phone loaded with every photo of Marcus I had. I brought a small bottle of the cologne he used to wear. I brought Biscuit's collar, the red one with the little bone-shaped tag that jingled when she walked. And I sat down across from my husband and I started talking. I told him about our first date. How he took me to a barbecue place in downtown Raleigh and accidentally spilled sauce all over his shirt and tried to play it off like nothing happened. I told him about our wedding at the courthouse in Onslow County because neither of us had money for a big ceremony, and how he wore his dress blues and I wore a white sundress from Target, and we did not care because we were so happy. I told him about Biscuit, how he found her at a rescue shelter when she was just 8 weeks old, and she climbed right into his lap and fell asleep, and that was it, she was ours. He listened. He was patient and polite. Sometimes he smiled at the stories, but his eyes still looked at me like I was telling someone else's life. I went back every day. For a week, then 2 weeks. I told him everything I could think of. The time we got lost driving to Myrtle Beach and ended up at some random seafood shack that turned out to have the best shrimp either of us had ever eaten. The way he always hummed the same song while he cooked, off-key, every single time. How on our second anniversary he tried to bake me a cake and it came out completely flat, but he put candles on it anyway and sang to me, and it was the best cake I ever had. But nothing changed. Every day I showed up, and every day he looked at me like a kind stranger. Grateful for the company, maybe, but lost. After about 3 weeks, I started to lose hope. I sat in the guest house one night, staring at the ceiling, and I thought, maybe this is how it ends. Maybe I got my miracle, he is alive, but the Marcus I knew is gone forever. Maybe I need to accept that. Kevin had gone back to the States by then. He had to get back to work. It was just me, alone in a foreign country, sitting in a tiny room, talking to a man who did not know my name. Then one afternoon, something happened. I had brought my phone to the hospital like I always did. I had been scrolling through old videos, looking for anything that might trigger a response, and I found one I had forgotten about. It was from 2 years ago. A Sunday morning at home. I had been filming Biscuit doing something goofy in the living room, and Marcus walked into the frame, still half asleep, holding a coffee mug. He looked at the camera, grinned, and said, "Is that thing recording?" Then he walked over, leaned down, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Good morning, beautiful." I almost did not show it to him. It felt too intimate, too painful, but something made me press play and hold the phone out anyway. Marcus looked at the screen. The video was only 12 seconds long. When it ended, I expected the same blank politeness I had gotten every day for 3 weeks. But instead, Marcus did not move. He kept staring at the screen. His brow furrowed, his lips parted slightly. And then, so quietly, I almost missed it, he said, "Biscuit." I froze. "What did you say?" He blinked. His eyes looked confused, almost frightened. "There was a dog," he said slowly. "A brown dog. She used to sleep on the bed." My hand flew to my mouth. "Yes," I said, tears already streaming down my face. "Yes. Biscuit. She is a brown lab mix. She always slept on your side of the bed, and you pretended to be annoyed, but you never moved her. Not once." He looked at me. And for the first time in 3 weeks, his eyes changed. The blankness cracked, just slightly, like a light turning on in a room that had been dark for a very long time. "I know that kitchen," he said. His voice was trembling now. "The yellow walls. We painted them together." "Yes," I whispered. "We did. It took us 2 days because you kept getting paint on the ceiling." He was quiet for a long moment. His hands were gripping the edge of the table. Then he looked at me, and his eyes were full of tears. "Rachel," he said. "My name." He said my name. Not because I told him, not because the doctor told him, because he remembered. I could not hold it together. I completely broke down. I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. I reached for him, and he reached for me. And we held each other right there in that little courtyard, both of us crying, both of us shaking. He kept saying my name over and over, like he was afraid he would forget it again. "Rachel, Rachel, Rachel." He did not remember everything. Not that day, not for many days after. The memories came back slowly, in pieces, like a puzzle being assembled by an invisible hand. Some pieces came quickly. Others took weeks. The doctor said some memories might never fully return, but the important ones, the ones that mattered, were finding their way back. It took another month of paperwork, medical evaluations, and coordination between the Turkish hospital and the U.S. military before Marcus was cleared to come home. The Marine Corps opened an investigation into how the identification process had failed. Kevin's discovery had triggered a review that uncovered errors in the recovery report. The remains they had identified as Marcus belonged to another service member whose family was then properly notified. It was a painful, complicated mess that would take months to sort out, but none of that mattered to me. What mattered was that Marcus was alive, and he was coming home. The day we landed in the States, my mom was waiting at the airport with Biscuit on a leash. The second Biscuit saw Marcus, she pulled so hard she nearly knocked my mom over. She ran straight to him, jumped up, and started licking his face. Marcus dropped to his knees and held her, laughing and crying at the same time. "Good girl," he said. "I missed you too." That night, we sat on the porch of our little house in Jacksonville. The same porch where I had watched him drive away 8 months ago. The same porch where 2 Marines in dress blues had come to tell me he was dead. Marcus held my hand and looked up at the sky for a long time without saying anything. Then he turned to me and said, "I dreamed about this porch. Even when I could not remember your name or anything else, I dreamed about sitting right here. I did not know why. I just knew this place meant something." I squeezed his hand. "It means everything," I said, "and so do you." He pulled me close. Biscuit squeezed herself between us like she always did. And for the first time in 6 months, the silence in that house did not feel empty. It felt full. Full of gratitude, full of relief, full of the kind of love that somehow survives even the things that are supposed to destroy it. I almost lost my husband forever. The world told me he was gone. The military confirmed it. I stood at his funeral. I accepted the flag. I grieved for 6 months. And if my brother had not stumbled across that report on a random Tuesday night, I might have spent the rest of my life believing Marcus was buried in that cemetery in Wilmington. But he was not. He was alive. And love, stubborn, impossible, unreasonable love, brought him back to me. If you are watching this right now, wherever you are in the world, I want you to know something. Do not give up on the people you love. Even when the whole world tells you to. Even when the evidence says there is no hope. Because sometimes the truth is hiding in the last place you would ever think to look. And sometimes the people we lose find their way back to us in ways we never imagined. Thank you for listening to my story. My name is Rachel Dawson. And my husband is home.